Well, welcome to the Premier Living Podcast. My name is William Marsh. I'm the Director of Clinical Education here at Premier Research Labs. And once again, I am joined by our very own Nick Labinsky. Nick, it's great to see you again.
Good to see you, Will.
On today's episode, and hopefully you all have been following along because we've been kind of diving in deep into all the different facets of the company. We actually did a wonderful segment on microbiome health last week, but we're actually going to be talking about hidden contaminants in food and dietary supplements, actually bringing in some results that we've had and findings that we've had over the last couple months in 2025. And I think it's important to note, sometimes overlooked, right? We talk about it so much here at Premier Research Labs, but it's really that finished product quality, but all the testing that goes into all the supplements that we manufacture here. And so we'll stress it millions of times more probably on this podcast, but we actually wanted to bring in some results and talk through some findings today because it really kind of illustrates where the market's potentially heading and kind of hopefully brings some awareness if you, a practitioner or consumer, aren't informed where there can be contaminants in your supplement products. So, Nick, you want to kind of introduce the topic a little bit more?
Yeah, no, this is definitely a passion of mine to go through this because we truly do, what we do here, less than 1% of the industry does. And one of the things that we actually have embraced over the years, and definitely a student of James Nilkobovic at Florida Research Labs, is doing orthogonal testing. And that's doing multiple testing techniques to answer a single endpoint. So what we'll do is we'll not just do one for ID for like TLC or high performance thin layer chromatography where it's like a fingerprint of the active chemicals in there to make sure the product is or the ingredient is the right plant part and or if it's the right species. But we'll actually top that with another test like microscopy. Why? Because there's gaps. There's advantages to HPLC, very specific, but you're not going to see certain contaminants like salt, like sand, sometimes salt. It could be sand, also could be maltodextrin, starch. We're gonna go over some case studies of that today that we saw Q1, and so this is just Q1. We actually, unfortunately, I have to say this, we're expecting to see a rise in adulteration. We saw this in 2020 when there was a whole shipping issue. Supply chain issue, and now with the tariffs that are happening that are still existing, even though there's some calm right now, we expect to see adulteration rise because less people testing less. There's issues with the economies of people when they're wanting to pay less, so they have to cut corners. Many companies, which we'll never do, and they're going to test less, which means easier entry for all these bad actors out there getting adulterated product in or cut product in. I always say the food industry, the spice industry is the cartel. And they will always be there because you always have to eat or you're always trying to stay healthy or become healthy, right? Well, let's get into it. We'll talk about like the first case study, and this one was pretty shocking. It was a pumpkin seed. This pumpkin seed was supposed to be just a full spectrum pumpkin seed that we use normally for our erythroprobe, which has high iron content and a slew of other phytochemicals in there, but it was supposed to be completely intact, not just literally ground up. And when we did the TLC, the thin layer chromatography, it looks at the amino acid profile, and you can look at the actual TLC. It's like lane 1 and 2 compared to all the reference standards. Looks correct. I mean, it looks like the other ones, so it passed, no problem. We looked at different wavelengths, and we'll show you an example of that. If you go on YouTube, if you're listening to some podcasts, go to YouTube, you can actually see the actual TLCs there. When we looked under the microscope, though, what do we see? We're actually seeing an absence of different starches, oils, and what had happened, we saw this years ago with valerian root, they had extracted out, probably to use that pumpkin seed oil and another product, they used probably the starch and another product. They pulled out pretty much many of the main components and then sold the leftovers as regular whole food pumpkin seed, which it wasn't. It was literally the leftovers, and they tried to pass it off. Luckily, we caught this just because we did the microscopy, and you can only see it under there. The TLC was fine. Like if you only did that test, you would have never known. And I guarantee you, this is on the market somewhere. Everything I'm showing you today, I guarantee you, it's on the market somewhere. There's been no recalls or anything from this material because we reject it back to the vendor. We're not buying everything, and I know they're not calling everything back. There's no public announcement about that. So that was kind of the first one.
Well, I think it's maybe important to note, those starches and those different polysaccharide components have bioactivity in the body, right?
Absolutely.
And so, when you're looking to support somebody with pumpkin seed and all the different physiological effects of pumpkin seed, you need to have the full complex of metabolites in that. And so it kind of goes back to what is resident nutrition, right? And how are we really supporting the body to ideal health, which, so often people take supplements and they don't feel effects.
Absolutely.
This is a key example where a lot of those compounds that would be found naturally in pumpkin seed if you just ate it from the shelf, they're not in there. And we're trying to formulate the best product on the market, and this is why premier quality really matters. So.
Yeah, we are true full spectrum, and we do everything we can to ensure that you're getting the synergists and cofactors that we believe are necessary to help the bioavailability of whatever compound we're trying to help get you to absorb. And this is once again, this happens all the time. We see things like this. This one was a little bit different, that so much was extracted out, not just a single ingredient. It was probably took out the protein, they took out the starch, they took out the oils, and they literally left over whatever the leftover was for us.
Which is important to, when we're talking about defining contamination, it's not even necessarily what's in the formula or in the raw material, it's what isn't in that raw material.
Absolutely. Missing components, first of all, you're paying premium price for this stuff. You want to get what you pay for. Like, this is what the FDA has identified. Most consumers, they want to make sure whatever you say is in there, right? And also, if there's something, and whatever you don't say is in there or don't mention is not in there, right? So where people are putting other items, which we'll talk about in a little bit, and then also that it's not going to hurt you, correct? And you have some kind of scientific substantiation. But this is a problem. This is a rampant problem, and like I said, we are prepared with our quality controls steps throughout our process, and we're not turning down the dial at all in quality. In fact, we're doing it more, actually. And we're looking for better and more improved vendors and constantly doing that in different parts of the world. So we're always trying to take that next step to improve our quality system or innovate quality in a different way.
I think it's important because, a lot of people, they go to the safety angle, right? They may test for microbial contamination, maybe certain toxic elements, which is rare, right? That's added cost. But a lot of people aren't necessarily verifying the entire phytochemical matrix of the raw material going in.
Yep.
And that's something that as a consumer, when I'm going to the grocery store, for example, and I buy a bag of apples, I can tell when it's a really bad batch of apples. It tastes maybe less nutritious. It just tastes like fruit juice, perhaps.
Yep.
You kind of can tell, okay, this apple is maybe subpar from a quality angle. But when it's in a dietary supplement,
you can't tell with taste, and even if these are in capsules, right? So you can't taste anything. And it looks exactly the same, like something that's not adulterated. You wouldn't be able to see with your eye. Even if it was in a powder with all the masking agents and everything out there, there's no way. And so you got to really be able to ask the right questions, and just know you get what you pay for. Always know that. And unfortunately, even when you do pay for it, sometimes either out of just lack of knowledge, sometimes it is clandestine, where it's intentional, where people will put stuff in there or leave stuff out or just say there's something in there for putting more money in their pocket. You just got to be careful these days. So there's a lot of supplements on the market, a lot of counterfeit. I always say, go to your practitioner, know who you're buying from, make sure it's coming from the actual manufacturer, and really that's going to be guaranteed through the practitioner. Your practitioners are literally your vetting arm for making sure that ingredient is good. Like, imagine it's like your personal shopper.
That's true, actually.
If you had one, I don't have a personal shopper, but if you had one, they go through it. They make sure it's good. They're the ones doing the research. They wouldn't compromise their license and integrity by suggesting something that may be less than below par than what it should be for what they need for you to support your health needs and whatever you're trying to bring up in your own health journey.
Yeah, I mean, it's so true, because as health professionals and working with health professionals, they really are the most rigorous. They go through the most rigorous quality checks with verifying everything they bring into their office. And so it's the beauty of us being a health professional brand, is you know that when you're working with a health professional as a consumer, they've done the distance in terms of quality checking on that product to make sure that this is the very best. And so,
and this is organic, so just know, just because it's organic doesn't mean anything.
Right.
The most contamination I've ever seen has been inorganic. You have a higher chance of being, chances are non-organic are going to be more contaminated than a organic item, just because of less processes and the restrictions on what they do, and they have another body certifying them. But don't take that as, oh, it's organic, so it's gospel and it's going to be good.
We've even had conventional that tests better than organic.
Absolutely.
In certain scenarios.
Absolutely. And sometimes it's almost too organic standards. You just don't pay the money to get it certified.
Yeah.
And we saw this, it's interesting. This is where we do TLC, and then we see the microscopy. Sometimes we have the microscopy done first, and we actually cancel the TLC. And this is something that happened with alfalfa. We had an alfalfa, which is something used in our greens mix. It's organic as well. But this one, and we'll show you the microscopy on there, it was missing many of the features. There's some alfalfa in there, but it's mostly other stuff. And it's not like, this is stuff that's grown, in the ground. So you can imagine there's foreign organic matter. It's actually allowed. Anytime you get any of these powders, you're allowed, 2.5%, maybe less, of foreign matter, because it's in the earth. And you're going to get some of that when you harvest it. As long as you have good agricultural practices, you should minimize it. But sometimes it's 80% other things. Just enough in there if you did TLC. But we didn't even do it. We did the microscopy, and we were like, there's nothing in here that says it's really alfalfa. So that was another contamination that came in that was more extreme. Sometimes we had a rosemary that came in that was 70% rosemary and 30% other stuff. Okay, that's all right. At least there was 70%, but we didn't accept that. But this was pretty much some other ingredient. There's a little bit of alfalfa in there. So
maybe for people that are unfamiliar with the process of microscopy, can we kind of define that? And I know, if you're listening to this podcast, we'll have the slides kind of present overlaying.
Yeah, no, for sure.
On YouTube, but talk through the process of what the microscopy really entails, of how you verify.
So microscopy is looking at the histological features of the cells, basically, of the plant, to confirm it's the right species. So it's supposed to have typical type cells that are, found in the literature, that you have a botanist do, and we partnered with one of the best, been trained by the FDA, Flora Research Labs, and they looked under the microscope. And you got to understand, we go from thousands of kilos to 25 milligrams, so very, very tiny amount, that we put on a little slide, and you do multiple slides and look under the microscope to see if those cells are present. And there's chances of not actual doing the right subsetting, which means going from 1,000 kilograms to 25 milligrams. If you don't properly mix it, make sure that it gets there, you could miss. And that's happened to us before, where internally we didn't have the right process. There was a mistake made, and then we had to repeat it. And we find that in the OOS process, which looks for mistakes. This one was definitely not that. And we went under the microscope, and when you look at the actual microscopy, you'll see that there's other types of structural items that shouldn't be there, just uncharacteristic of alfalfa, period. And that is, it could be just the leftovers. It was the bottom of the barrel, and they put these in bags, and that's what we got. So anyways, this is a different technique. HPLC, they're extracting out the active, either chemicals, it could be amino acids, it's some component inside the cells to see if they have the actives in there. This is looking at more of the outside, the macro, or I guess the microstructures of the plant itself. There's macroscopy too, which is looking at the whole plant. So if I actually got alfalfa in whole form, which we get cloves, we get certain items that we grind ourselves where it has high volatiles, because those are, have superior health effects by keeping that at high potency. which if you grind it yourself, you keep it within there, right? In fact, actually, the cloves is so strong, it will eat through the capsules when you first grind it. But we want to make sure it's as potent as it could possibly be. But if you get the microscopy, that's there. We'd love to do that one day, have that for every ingredient. But right now, we do get powders, and you have to do this extra set of testing. Otherwise, you miss the stuff. Most likely, we did TLC. You probably would have seen that there was it present. It could have been passed. I think it would have been very light bands. But, we didn't even go that far. We just let this one go. And then, there's this aspect of, okay, there's this, you had the pumpkin seed that was extracted out. So literally taking out the material, you have this alfalfa that's just not even alfalfa. And the next one is actually Siberian ginseng, Lithococcus, which we've had problems in the past. And these are not from the same vendors, these are multiple vendors, but this one actually, the actual HPLC, we did it first. Everything looked good, as usual. And this is a very common test, HPLC, most people do, looks very CSI looking. Once we went under the actual microscope, that's when we noticed this one had something added in. So it was actually additional starch that looked like it was dyed. It was like almost like a potato starch. That was the theory. But it was an additional starch that shouldn't be there. And it was added in there to basically do economic adulteration. Put more weight in there to put more money in their pocket. So they probably had not enough keys, so they added in the extra starch to make sure they reached the amount that we ordered. And this has happened multiple times to us from other vendors. And so, but once again, doing the one test, you'll never know this exists. And this one is, there's all of it's due to money. Everything's for money here, right? At the end of the day, they're trying to put more money in their pocket. Either they're taking out different components and selling you the leftovers so they can make money off every piece. Here, they're actually literally just adding extra stuff in there to say, and fillers, essentially, that shouldn't be there, right? So, and people are eating this.
Yeah.
Just know that I guarantee you, people are eating this somewhere.
Well, this kind of brings up a question maybe around just supply chain in general and how much vendors even know what they're being supplied. And so maybe, for the audience, walk through the typical process of procurement of raw materials for a dietary supplement, because I believe a lot of people don't even know how that's sourced and the layers and the number of steps that is required to actually get that into an encapsulated product that they then take themselves.
We have hundreds of different vendors and distributors. So there's the actual either farmers or the actual manufacturers of whatever we're buying that we love to work with them, but sometimes their volumes, the minimums are too large. We're a decent sized company where we're not anywhere to major sizes just yet. Future, it's coming soon. But that being said, sometimes you can't work with this direct manufacturer. You have to work with a distributor. And this distributors, unfortunately, they'll get material in, and they'll get it from multiple sources, right? And they'll change it on you. And sometimes they won't disclose, right? Some distributors are great. They'll actually say, hey, this is from this vendor, or this manufacturer, this is from this manufacturer. Other ones, they like to keep that close to the chest, and they'll not even disclose that. And they'll just say it's from a new vendor or from a new country of origin. And so you have to go through these steps, and each one, as it moves from one company to the next company, there's a chance of adulteration, contamination. As it moves hands, there's an increased chance every time it moves hands. That's just, we have to work with, getting some of these ingredients, because we do believe in having a synergistic formula where some of our formulas have 10, 12 ingredients, some of them smaller than others because they all support each other. But I'm not necessarily giving you a gram of each where we're going to hit those larger volumes for those main manufacturers. So we have to work with each one, and each one has different quality standards, right? The original farmer may not do any testing, right? They know what it looks like. This is alfalfa. They're smelling it. They're grinding it up. They're cleaning their equipment. That's great. As soon as it moves over to distributors, they're transferring that into their own packaging, and during that transfer, the contamination happens, or they're not doing any testing, or sometimes they do. Some vendors or distributors are great about doing testing, but I can tell you right now, from across every vendor that I know, there might be one that doesn't do aflatoxin. And that was kind of the last finding this last quarter was something that we haven't seen actually in one of the ingredients. It was rice bran, which is in a lot of, it's actually used by us. It was in an old formula called tocotrine many years ago, which unfortunately we don't have right now, but it's been used as more of a flow agent, lubricant, because of the oils that are naturally occurring in there. And we got this last lot in, and it was an organic, I believe it's a jasmine rice bran. And it tested very, very high for aflatoxin, B1. And you got to realize that USP allows 5, and there's different aflatoxin. There's B1, B2. There's definitely different ones that have different carcinogenic effects on the body. And the most poisonous carcinogenic aflatoxin there is B1. It is the one that really is linked to that liver cancer result. And you're allowed 5 by USP. Unfortunately, the food industry looks at aflatoxin as a whole. Like they look at it's 20 ppb is the allowed level. Now, that doesn't take into account having just 20 of B1 by itself. So if you have 5, but you have the other ones, there's less, it's all bad for you, but less harmful for the body in their minds. What we do, we take the higher road and say, we got to meet USP levels. This is where B1 has to be below 5. And this was 16. And this was confirmed, or we can show you a test result. We did multiple testing because, first of all, we'd never seen this, and we had to just make sure. And this is done by very sophisticated equipment. This is done by liquid chromatography, MSMS. This is basically a very, very precise piece of equipment, and it's actually validating to make sure that is really B1. And this is the lab we've used, Romer Labs, great lab. And unfortunately, this was confirmed. So you're going to see some changes from rice bran. We are looking for other sourcing for rice bran, but and we're going to take it out of formulas and probably have a little bit more loss in our manufacturing, but that's okay. I'd rather have loss there than provide any product that may hurt you. One thing you can always trust us, and I can guarantee it, that whatever we put out there is clean, 100%, to our standards. We're not going to falter on that. We're not going to change directions because of what's happening in the world. I'd rather not sell anything. Once again, if I'm not going to eat it, I'm not going to sell it, just like Dr. Marshall said, period.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, the scary thing about aflatoxins is not only are they hepatic toxic, right, harming the liver, but they actually can impair energy production by binding to cytochromes actually in the mitochondria. And so when you're looking at longevity and the process of synthesizing ATP in the body, aflatoxin exposure and that B1 specifically is basically like a neurotoxin to energy production, right? Yep. And so it's this aspect of like, why would you eat it?
Right.
Why would you have that in your food? And we've talked about it several times on how aflatoxins are on the rise.
Yeah.
Would you like to maybe elaborate how that may continue?
First of all, nobody's testing for it in terms of this industry now. There is certain ingredients out there, such as legumes, corn, that have a prevalence of aflatoxin, and there's a big push on coffee looking at aflatoxin, which is great. I love that. They're starting to looking at mycotoxins in general. But it's in every food you eat. It's from mold, and so from Aspergillus flavus, so it grows, which is ubiquitous. I probably could put some plates out here and find it in this room. It's everywhere, right? Mold, bacteria. We're a symbiotic organism in this world, and it's everywhere. So if you don't have the right drying conditions, this is why I told you the cayenne cutting corners. You're trying to get. I need to get 1,000 keys out, right? Imagine they're farmers, and it takes me a week to dry it, but I need to get this out by less than a week. Let's not dry it all the way. Send it out. All of a sudden, mold grows on it, and then they get aflatoxin in there. So that's just a hypothetical situation, but that really does happen, and we're seeing this. We're seeing an increase in prevalence. Meaning we're seeing more incidents of higher aflatoxin. And I'm really would love for basically the government to get involved to actually mandate more testing of aflatoxins across the whole supply chain, or at least have vendors start doing it themselves. Because if we had it at the raw materials stage where vendors actually testing for it, probably catch a lot of it before it gets filtered in. Not many companies are taking this high road, and I'm hoping that changes because you're here to take these things that improve your health, but while you're doing that, all of a sudden you're actually hurting yourself at the same time. So it's a little bit it's something that people don't know about, and I think as more people start questioning and asking, hey, are you testing for this? Just ask. People are listening, maybe they're not buying all their supplements from us. Call that other company and ask them. Just send them an email or, call them up.
Yeah.
Tell me what they say. I guarantee you they're not doing it.
Yeah, be curious about the foods and the supplements you're consuming, right? And always ask questions because, a lot of companies are built on, fancy marketing, a fancy label. They maybe have an ingredient panel, but they're not showcasing a lot of what's going behind in regards to production.
You forget the things you're going to eat, too. This is why we're coming out with a whole spice line in the very near future where we guarantee these spices are completely clean from, heavy metals, pesticides, but also aflatoxins because these are, generally heat stable. And so we want to make sure that if whatever you're doing, not just the supplements, but also the food you eat, it's clean, period.
Yeah, I mean, keep in mind that spice rack, and we won't name any brands, but there's a lot of adulteration that goes on to help process and help that flow and be shelf stable. And, there's an aspect of where if you're really looking to have a healthy soup with turmeric in it and it's laden with all these fillers and flow aids, once again, why would you eat it?
Absolutely. But that was the last one of this. And this is something you're seeing either materials being taken out of the product. You're seeing not even giving you what it really is. The alfalfa is not right. You see other instances where they're putting extra stuff in there. We got our bingo card was filled up this last quarter, but it is what it is, and this is something. But I can just guarantee you, what you get from us is going to be the most premium items you can find on the market, because everything's tested 100%. I am even extracts we test for aflatoxin. So because I've seen it. We've seen it in turmeric extract. We've seen it in magnolia extract, actually concentrated, where it's not just because it's lower level and then the solvents actually make it into a higher form, like a higher level, which then just hurts you even more. And nobody's testing for this. They don't even know. It's rather turn a blind eye than actually face this and put the process in place, which costs money. It's more expensive, but I think the whole point of these items is to improve your health, not to hurt you.
Amen. And I guess it may be a good opportunity to talk about what happens in our production process when we encounter this, because we sometimes do it. We hate back orders. We hate not being able to supply, but just as you said, we frequently make the stance that we will not sell this, and we frequently have to go through the whole process of potentially reformulating a product or go into full product source, like raw material sourcing, if the failure is there. So maybe sharing audience.
Yeah, no, as unfortunately, when we get these materials in, there's so much time before that material needs to be produced into a product, right? We're trying to have enough lead time in between from the time the raw material comes in to when that material back orders. Sometimes with increased demand, it may back order sooner. But when we see a failure, we're having to look at making a decision. Whenever there's some kind of adulteration, the choices are, do you use it? Absolutely not, right? We're not going to use it. Even if it's, not a toxin, it's just, there's other material in there. No, if it doesn't meet the standards of USP, like, 2.5%, it's not going to happen. I'm not going to eat it. I personally take many of our supplements, and my family does, and I will not compromise that, ever. So that's out of the question. So we move on from that. So what's the other option? 2, we wait and try to find another source. 3, we could reformulate. And depending on what it is. So rice bran wasn't actually essential to the formula. It was more of a lubricant. It was more for a natural, let's call it excipient, right? Not using max dairy or anything else. And it was more for the aspects of making the machines run better. I can take a little bit more of a hit and have it run less efficient while we look for another one, because we may be able to find one in the future, and then we'll buy a decent amount of that material to hold us over. But that being said, we will go through a reformulation. Sometimes, if we see enough problems, which we almost did with cayenne, that we almost came to the conclusion of just completely eliminating that ingredient from the formulas. Fortunately, we found a good source, and we're continuing to use that source. Not to say they won't have problems in the future either, but we're working with those vendors to try to make sure they have the right process in place and to hopefully have even an intermediate cleaner before it even gets here. But we will look at possibly eliminating from the formula completely, just because the supply out there is too contaminated, and unfortunately, we would like to have, maybe it's essential. It's a essential product for the practitioner that they use day in, day out in their practice, and we want to make sure we put those and have that for them, so they can actually support their patients. Because without it, at the end of the day, then they're not able to do what they need to do, and then they have to actually compromise and maybe do a subpar formula to aid this acute need, even if it hurts them. So we don't want that to happen. So we have to make hard decisions, and sometimes I don't like what we have to do from a business standpoint and from a formulator standpoint, but we have to make some decisions and sometimes simplify the formula because of that without losing the efficacy, right? So we go through these reformulations every once in a while, and I expect in the future, as the supply chain, we're going to continue to work with them, find better supply ingredients, and once we have that, second and third backup, hopefully we are in a better place that doesn't happen anymore. Unfortunately, I don't see that happening anytime soon with what's happening internationally right now with the tariffs and what's happening with just the supply chain in general.
Yeah, I think it's maybe even important to note how the change in the supply chain and just the landscape across the globe is impacting quality, not from a ingredient sourcing standard, but also from a testing standard and the rising costs that may be associated with
Absolutely,
that.
Yeah. So there's a couple things happening right now, and it's interesting. I've had conversations with different practitioners, and there were, we do source some items from China, and so they were like, great, we're going to be moving away from those sourcing, and we'll get better supply. That is not necessarily the case. What happens is that everybody, as they move away, the supply gets dried up, and when that happens, adulteration comes, and because people are, once again, they have 1,000 keys they need to fulfill, they only have 500. What do? They cut it. This is what happens. We have to be understanding this is not just one-offs. This happens very frequently, so we have to be ready for that. And the testing we do, less than 1% of the industry is really doing this testing. So you have to be ready for these items that are going to be in the supply chain, and just people don't know because there's contract manufacturers that make these at very cheap prices. They're looking for the cheapest ingredients, and once again, you get what you pay for. Also, we're seeing price increases across the globe, right? People are raising their prices, and even the cheaper ones are raising the price. We're seeing 10 to 20% outside of even the tariffs, just everywhere. The damage has been done from what that is, and we have a new normal. And so we're moving forward with that, trying to ensure that we have a rock solid supply chain to continue and to make great product. But as we see maybe drops in quality somewhere, we're going to have to make adjustments. And I think that's just something where we're going to have to play this out and see how things change over the next 6 months. There's a lot of volatility still happening. I'm hoping we're through the worst of it, and I really think that we're in a good spot as a company, though, because we've been working on supply chain and really fortifying this for the last 2 years, actually. We've been working on it forever, but really focusing of actually moving many of our supply chain away from China. We're pretty much close to that, actually. So I can't say it just yet, but there may be an announcement later this year where we can say we're 100% away. But as we move away and we find other supply, and I have to say also there's still good stuff coming out of China. Yeah, you get what you pay for. Right. You can get a $5 extract of green tea extract. You can get a $250 green tea extract. You get the $5. You get what you pay for. That's all I'm going to say there. But that being said, we're going to be, because of the volatility, I think we've had an initiative for many years now to get away from that part of the world, and we are pretty close.
And it's also maybe important to make just a reference point in regards to quality testing and the costs associated with that because of the materials that may come from vendors out of China. So it's not even the raw material for the supplement, it is also the testing equipment and the different solvents and the different, protection equipment that may be used in the lab.
Absolutely. Every associated cost has gone up. And I think that's why every vendor went up 10 to 20% because this, like you said, the solvents, what we're hearing from our laboratories that because they do, many of them come out of China, what they used to pay $200 for is now like, let's say $1,200. And so these are very large price increases. And this is outside of even the tariffs. Right. This is just price increases. And so we don't know exactly where everything's going to land, but just know the associated costs, the packaging, all that contributes to these price increases that have happened. We feel we're done with them after we have a July 1st coming up, but after that, we are going to hold steady. We're not. We think we're in a good spot, and we've solidified our supply chain to not have to do that and had enough raw material to hold us over to get through this turmoil or storm, whatever you want to call it. We're in a good spot in that respect.
Well, it's almost a financial responsibility to ensure product quality because Absolutely. It ensures outcomes with patients. And honestly, I think that a lot of companies are always, there's a lot of companies that when they're looking at quality, that's typically where they can cut costs first and foremost. I think it's nice for hopefully a lot of people listening in to know that that's not where we're looking. We're looking for efficiencies in operations. We're looking for personnel, just how we can improve how we do business overall rather than cutting quality.
I would, no. This is something you eat.
Right.
So I'd rather not sell. This company will not be in business if I have to cut quality. Because at the end of the day, why am I doing this anymore? This is not what the mission was. It was about transforming global wellness. And you can't do that once you allow anything I just told you. Mm-hmm. And many of the other presentations I've done, you can go to the website and look at it there. There's a whole case study of older, contamination is very similar to this, but in different ingredients. Never going to happen.
How, maybe taking a little higher level view on our mission and, where we really want to go in the next couple of years, how do you see quality evolving? Because we really, we set the premier quality standard, which is what less than 1% of the industry is doing. Mm-hmm. How do you see us continuing to evolve that quality standard through the next decade?
I believe, first of all, we want to educate, definitely, and make awareness, right? As I speak about this right now, I'm hoping companies realize that this is what needs to be done. Like this for the betterment of the world, right? We need this to be raised up. Now, what we're doing, like I said, less than 1% of the industry is doing, we're gonna be continuing to push that envelope, innovate even further. And we're looking at that actually right now for many of the panels and the different toxins out there. There's thousands and thousands, and there is a Pandora's box. You look and you'll find something probably. So we are opening those doors to figure out what is that next step. And we're trying to address we'll call them the elephants in the room, because I call aflatoxin the elephant in the room because it's there. Nobody's just paying attention to it. Like they're just turning their head and make sure they don't look at it too. It's too bright light kind of thing. We're going to continue to look at it and to evaluate and to do additional different panels to give you the cleanest material and take it to the next step. But my hope is as we innovate that, we're trying to get awareness out there of this problem. Like people just don't know. They have no idea that the food they ate last night, coffee is great. Like there's a big push on coffee, and I love that. We sell our own coffee, very premium, tests for mycotoxin, heavy metals, all that. And there's other companies doing the same thing that we hear about. Why aren't we talking about all the other foods?
Yeah.
Like all the spices, and we're talking about botanicals and molds everywhere, just period. So every botanical has a chance of getting it, and we've seen it across. It's not just the corn, the legumes, like I said, turmeric, chase tree, hydrangea root. These different ingredients that it could be anywhere, and a lot of times in roots. A lot of times because it's in the ground, higher moisture, but it is rice bran. We're seeing it, so it depends, and you have to dry these items, and if it's not dried properly, mold grows. Period. So we're going to continue to push that envelope, I think awareness, and we're going to be doing more additional panels and really transparency. And you can request, I don't know if everybody knows this in the audience, but you can request a C of A from us. We'll give you the results. So like many companies won't do that. We have a templated right now, just pass-fail kind of thing that most companies do. But if you want the actual results, we'll give it to you. I have no problem. why you're eating this. You deserve to know that.
I think, we had a conversation a week ago around our new certification that's going to be launched in a couple weeks. And, I believe maybe a quality certification, for those to be informed, might be on the horizon too,
That'd
at some
be
level.
Something we can create and literally, have a whole training on not only from our philosophy of nutrition, energetics, quality. We want to surround you with knowledge. Knowledge is power. And more you have of that, the better choices you can make. We cut out the need for even worrying about all that through our products, and just know that we've gone through all that. And so, but we want to share the knowledge, and hopefully people can take that and raise the standard everywhere else by asking the right questions.
Amen. I mean, it's if you're a business owner, if you're a consumer, if you're a health practitioner, investing in quality is probably the best investment you can make, because that sets you up for the long term. Well, Nick, I feel like we've really covered, this kind of Q1 review, but also touched on a lot of tangential subjects as it pertains to Premier Quality. But maybe for everybody, if they want more of these conversations, they want to, take a deeper dive into like our philosophy and our content that we've produced the last couple of weeks. Would you like to?
Yeah, for people that don't know, that wherever you found this episode, either through email, but all the episodes of the podcast are available on the website, first of all, or your favorite platform. I don't know how many platforms there are, but we're on many of them. The actual webinars and the recordings are actually behind the login, so if you're a practitioner, you do get access to that. So even if you miss one, there's lunch and learns, where we're producing probably more content than we ever have as a company, really sharing the knowledge, if you will. Always know that you can watch that webinar. If you miss it that night, don't worry. It will be on the website, and watch it at your leisure. Whatever you want to, listen to this on the ride home, whenever you have time. I'm listening to different podcasts all the time personally. It's loving to absorb as much knowledge as possible, but know that you don't have to be restricted to that time. It's great to be there, because if you are at the event, then you can ask questions. You have a Q&A section at the end, which is great for people to really understand, or you can always send in a question too, and we will get back to you. Coming up, today, even you have a lunch and learn, so this will probably be out after that, but know that lunch and learn will be available on the website if you log in. And then next week, we have a couple events. We have a webinar on detox, gastrointestinal detox, that the great Will Marsh will be going over many different things there. And then actually we are going to be at the Dave Asprey Biohacking Summit, where we're going to be launching our new longevity panel. It's based on the 12 hallmarks of aging. Absolutely excited about that. So we're going to have a talk on that Friday around 12:45, and talking about the origins, and then also this longevity panel. If you're going to be there, please stop by our booth. It's PRE-20. PRE-20. Look us up. Come see us. We're going to have actually where you can actually take one of these longevity panels right then and there to get the results. So we'll be actually taking orders at the booth. So hopefully if you're there, please stop by and say hi at least. But always know there's areas to go find all this information after it. The podcast, like I said, you probably found it either Spotify or on a website, but the video recordings, the webinars, all those items are going to be there for you. It's a library of information that for you to go through whenever you have time, because we know that the practitioners are very busy with their own practice, running a business, and sometimes you just don't have time to be there, or you have a family at night that you work all day and then you have your family at night, and we get it. So however we can help you, so you can actually use our products more efficiently and to support that patient to transform their health.
Yeah, and with all of our content, the intention really is to support your awareness around how you can support and better build your health strategies for your ideal outcomes, whether that's for you as a consumer, working with a health professional, or a health professional having empowerment around different aspects and insights to really nourish the whole body to ideal health. So we have a lot of exciting stuff on the horizon, and Nick, it's just an honor to have these conversations with you. Thank you for being a true steward of quality and really being a thought leader in the space in that regard. We're all honored to work here at Premier, and hopefully everybody here sees the value of what we're doing in regards to our Premier quality philosophy. So thank you.
Thank you, Will.
Between the stress at the office and juggling my kids' soccer schedule, my energy was running on empty. Then, I found Premier Research Labs, and they've been trusted by health practitioners for more than 35 years. Now, I have the energy I had 10 years ago. I'm finally sleeping through the night, and with their digestive support, I've even shed a few pounds. Plus, Premier Research Labs products are made in the U.S. with top-quality natural ingredients and cutting-edge science. I found them on Amazon, but you can learn more about them if you visit prlabs.com today and start your journey to feeling your best.